What's up, everybody? It's Alex from Heavy New York, calling from the quarantine zone again here in New York City, and we return with Mario and Sarah from Spotlights. Thank you guys so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks
Alex.
for having us.
It's so awesome to have you here. How's everything in Pittsburgh going?
It's going well, man. It's we feel for all our friends stuck in New York right now because it's definitely nice to have a little bit of space and breathing room during something like this. But things are good. In our neighborhood, it's usually pretty quiet anyways. So, it's almost business as usual as long as we stay in our homes and whatnot.
More importantly, how's Melvin, Luis, and Boris and everybody doing?
They're good. They're really good. They're again, we have a pretty good sized yard out here, so they're super happy about that. Boris is currently outside right now, being a jerk.
Yeah. He goes in and out of the house at least like 50 times a day.
Yeah.
He can't make up his mind, so.
That's Boris.
Yep.
But it's so good to have you here. First off, I want to thank you guys for still making music during this time. I love the covers that you've been posting. And
Thanks, man.
But Love and Decay, the last record that came out, I thought was phenomenal. Could maybe these covers that you're putting out musically serve as a clear indication to what maybe the future follow-up to Love and Decay could sound like?
I don't think so. Maybe. I really don't know. We actually put out an EP after Love and Decay that came out, was that March 7th? March 7th.
Yep.
And
on Blues Funeral.
Yeah, on Blues Funeral. It was part of a vinyl-only subscription thing that is now out for the public, but it's called We Are All Atomic.
Yeah.
And that was kind of like not necessarily a follow-up to Love and Decay, but something a little bit different that maybe would hint to what might happen next, but we really don't know, especially with all this. The reason we're doing the covers is kind of like to not have the pressure of like worrying about what we're gonna write next, or having to like come up with new material ourselves, so we can just kind of buy, or we can pick songs that we think are cool and just do all the arranging and all the creative stuff that comes along with making music, but without having to write the actual songs.
Yeah.
So it's kind of fun, and it keeps us moving, but
yeah, keeps us busy.
Yeah. Was the making of Love and Decay, was that originally, were you going into it trying to make a direct follow-up to what we heard on Seismic, or do you think that Love and Decay was almost kind of like a new start for Spotlights?
A little bit of both.
Yeah, some of the songs on there were older.
Yeah.
Older than Love and Seismic and Titles.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, like a lot of the ideas for Love and Decay had been around, and I think that happens for a lot of our stuff. Like even this new EP, We're All Atomic, also has parts of songs that were brought in from like, ideas that just never made it, even before Titles.
Yeah.
So we're never really like being like, okay, what are we gonna do for this one? It just kind of starts flowing, and you start putting stuff together, and then little by little the idea really starts forming, and then things get developed into more of a concise thing. So
yeah, and I know that Love and Decay was the first time that Chris was collaborating with you guys, and being that he's Mr. Hardcore, I'd imagine I heard a little hardcore influence in your sound of in your signature sound of what people are calling dream sludge.
Yeah. I mean, both Chris and I grew up listening to like early, and Sarah listening to like early 90s hardcore and like post-hardcore bands. So
yeah,
I think more than a lot of the bands that people think we like, we kind of like that stuff more,
Mm-hmm. Well, I've noticed that, like, especially with Love and Decay, and this could go for your whole catalog, I've always thought that your music was fairly experimental. Just on the record alone, I thought a song like Xerox was very different from Far From Falling, very different from, like, The Beauty of Forgetting. Like, it's fair to say that, like, you guys like to try new things. It seems like you don't try to pigeonhole yourselves in a style, right?
Yeah, and I think because we like so many different types of music, that really shows, in the music as well.
Yeah, I think
our, style on it.
Even as music fans, like, we get pretty bored with music easily, so, like, I think that's also what shines through is us wanting to make music that we think we would like to listen to. Like,
Right.
I don't want to hear an album that just sounds the same for 10 songs. I want some dynamic and change. We try to keep some of like a consistent sound or whatever throughout, so you can tell it's the same band, but keep it interesting. So we're kind of coming at it as fans more than even writers, I think.
Yeah. Is it ever a preconceived idea of what you want to incorporate in it, or does it kind of in a way like happen by accident?
No, it just evolves on its own, really.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there might be like sort of a spark of an idea, like, ooh, we should write something like heavy and like sort of like this, whatever, whatever the idea might be. But we're never like, all right, this is what we're gonna do next,
Yeah.
Do you try to? I like asking artists this. This is kind of like a new question I've been incorporating. But like, do you try to, in a way, like capture a moment with your songs, or is that not even like a priority?
I guess unintentionally, you're always capturing a moment, regardless. The way I usually write stuff is somewhat spontaneous. So I guess you're capturing that moment. I'll get an idea like while I'm in the shower, and it'll be like a drum beat with like some sort of riff in my head or a melody, and I literally have to like keep singing it in my head until I get out of the shower and have to run downstairs or run to the laptop or grab my phone and like sing it into that whatever, however I can get it down as fast as I can get it down, because if I give it more than like an hour or two when I do actually put it down in whatever way, it just doesn't sound the same in my head. You know what I mean? It doesn't have that same kind of like idea, that pop that it had when it just popped into my brain. So
Yeah.
I think it's definitely capturing a moment in a sense,
Yeah, because I'd imagine the longer you work on something, it's the harder it is to maintain that spark, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of them come out, it'll be like everything comes at once and it just kind of flows, and I sit down and kind of the song just lays itself out for me. But some of them you have to really just like bounce back and forth and try different things and work them out more.
Yeah. And then there's also the matter of playing it live. I think I've seen Spotlights now probably more than any other band I've seen live. But when it comes to playing live, is there maybe a similar creative energy that you channel into your live presence as you do when you're making music, or is playing live and making music just a separate art altogether?
It's different. I think especially the way our band works, like, I'm basically the main songwriter for the band, so playing the songs together live is really kind of the moment we get to, for real, all of us put our own energies into the music, like, I don't know, not equally, but like with the same amount of energy. It's like instead of each of us playing our own parts, we get to put it all together and do it as a unit when we play live, versus like when recording, you're kind of like doing parts and kind of putting them together to make this thing. Especially the way we record, since we don't really like sit in a room and jam the songs out until they're ready. We just kind of like write parts, get in the studio and make a record, and then we figure out what we're going to do live. They're definitely separate entities, I think.
Yeah, especially because, people love both the current album and the album previous. You got to mix up the set list a little bit more. And, I always ask if you're playing Size of the Planet at every single show.
Yeah.
And Walls.
Yeah.
That's why, I think that's why the set list at Elsewhere you recently played is probably my favorite Spotlight show.
Yeah,
Nice. That was a fun one.
That was really fun.
I didn't even know that room existed in there.
I know,
It's a
right?
cool little room, man. That was so much fun.
Yeah, that venue is awesome. It's like every time I go there, I discover like a new room or another way I could enter
Seriously,
the venue.
that was crazy.
Yeah, the place is like a maze.
Yeah.
Now, you ready for the most difficult question of the interview? I want you both to answer this.
Okay.
All right, so Beauty of Forgetting is a song that's under 11 minutes. Xerox is 3.5 minutes. Far From Falling, 7.5 minutes. How do you guys know when a song is done? Who wants to go first?
You can go first.
know. I guess for me, I mean, Mario's the main songwriter, and I like to just be the sounding board to what's happening. So I guess for me, I get to hear the whole idea pretty raw in the beginning, and I guess, I just kind of see what my ear and my heart likes, and then I give my opinion, and whatever happens. I guess I don't really think on it that hard. It's more of a feeling than, oh, it should be this way or that way. It's like, that feels too long or that feels too short, or, it's more of a feeling for me for songs.
Yeah, I think pretty much the same. I think it's just a matter of we've all been involved with music for so long, and I've been writing for so long, and been listening to music for so long, and being an engineer and a producer, I think, plays the biggest part in all that, just because I get to hear so many other people's songs where I'm like, man, that song was really good, but why did they have to add that extra part in there? What, or vice versa, if they would have just stayed playing that killer riff for 4 more times, that would change the whole thing, So I try and approach our stuff kind of like that, where, like I said before, as a fan, as somebody who would want to hear this song, how does it feel complete to me, and or is it feeling like I'm getting bored when I listen back to it? I think that's the way that helps me figure out what's, the length of a song. But we're never confined to anything. I'll write an 18-minute song, and if that's how it is, that's what it is.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned being an engineer too, and I've watched you work live sound at numerous gigs at St. Vitus, and I know that you're working on a couple of my friends' albums that I'm not sure if that's allowed to be announced, so I won't say specifically, but but I'd imagine that being an engineer, working live sound, it also has to teach you some new things, and maybe you could sneak in some extra stuff into spotlights, right?
Oh, for sure, man. Yeah, I mean, I think I learned more about being in a band from recording other bands and working with other bands. I think it really helped me kind of see all the issues in my playing and all the issues in my songs and my writing throughout the years, because you kind of get to see other people making those mistakes, and you're like, oh, wow, I'm doing that same thing too. Maybe I'll, clean this up, or you start realizing a lot of things when you're on the other side of the glass like that.
Yeah. Now, when it comes to getting inspired for music in general, whether it's ideas for a live show, because the music is I feel like Spotlights is not even just about the music, but it is a vision. It really is a artistic entity that I think enhances all 5 senses. At least that's my opinion. But
I'm glad.
Thank you.
In order to get inspired, whether it's for songwriting or for whatever, do you almost have to put yourself in a certain place at a certain time in order for ideas to come, or does inspiration sometimes come out of nowhere?
Usually it's out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like I was saying, it'll most of the time I'm walking down the street not worrying about writing or anything, and it'll hum a little riff in my head, and I'll be like, oh shit, that could be cool. and that becomes one of our songs, It's pretty rare that I sit down to be like, okay, I'm gonna write a song.
Yeah,
I feel
starts to come out.
I feel 9 times out of 10 when it happens that way, it's always disappointing.
Yeah, and I mean, even as making visual art or anything like that, you don't really, you might sit there and look at a canvas and something will come too, but you don't really sit down with a fully preconceived notion of exactly how everything's going to come out.
Yeah. But do you ever sometimes have the creative energy, the vibe, you really want to make something, but and then you sit down, you try to do it, but you just you want to create something, but it's not coming out in a way.
100%.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
And I have a couple of more questions for you, but when it comes to Spotlight's tours, I don't think any band has really toured with a variety as you guys have. Like, first time I saw you was with Deftones, but then it was opening up for Candiria. Then it was like Quicksand and Glassjaw, and then Pallbearer and Full of Hell, Mr. Bungle. I mean, and now the Faith No More and Korn that's up in the air. But like, you have to have noticed like maybe a different reaction or maybe a different type of audience depending on who you've toured with, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's really awesome to be able to tour with such a variety of musical groups and musicians, because there's so many more fans you can reach that way. Because, you know, even as a fan, I don't want to go to a show and watch the same band 4 times. I want to discover new music, and I think it's awesome that, you know, we've gotten the opportunity to do that, and I wish more bands would do that. I wish they would get out of their comfort zone and find, you know, bands that don't, you know, aren't in their music family or community, and but are good, you know, and it'll just bring everyone together and spread, you know, your music, because there's fans out there that might not discover you unless you tour with a certain group, you know, because they believe in those musicians to give them good recommendations. So I think it's really awesome, and it's really helped us out a lot.
Yeah, when are you going to do a Cannibal Corpse tour?
That would be amazing.
Fuck yeah.
I think it should be us, Cannibal Corpse, and Igor.
Ooh, that would be amazing. That
would be incredible.
That Igor tour was amazing.
It was so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of my favorites.
They're incredible.
Did you hear the new album?
Yes.
Yeah.
How amazing is it?
I know.
It's ridiculous, man.
So good.
Yeah.
It makes me mad. That's one of the few bands that I can listen to and I get mad at myself for just all, you know, like, I don't think I could ever be as creative and prolific as that dude is.
Yeah.
You never know.
Is
never
amazing.
Say never.
No, I mean in a good way. You know, it's like that's inspiration to me when I hear shit like that, and it's like that's pushing the envelope in a completely new direction. Like, you know, I think these days there's so much music of every fucking type of music you could ever want to hear. And it's really hard to imagine like what's next, you know, how can you take all this and make something actually new? And that band is, I think, the answer so far, is at least in rock and heavy music.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And electronic music, and like, you know, it's just, they really kind of do it all.
Yeah, and maybe you could do a tour with like Celine Dion one day.
Hey, fuck it.
I mean, sure. I'll open for Celine. Let's do it.
Yeah. If the price is right? And the final question I wanted to ask you is I think when it comes to covering material, like, I don't consider, like, you know, every time a band like does a cover, like, sometimes it's like a B-side or it's something that a band does for fun, but when I listen to your covers, whether it was, you know, Hanging by Fate, the Cure cover, or the recent covers you've been posting, I think it's just as good because you really put the spotlight spin on it, but I know that you are covering the original song, so there's like a lot of respect towards it. Right. But is there maybe a different attachment that you have to playing another artist's material as opposed to the material that you all wrote together?
It's, I don't know. For me personally, it's kind of like it's a little freer. It's just like
a little bit easier.
Yeah, like I was saying earlier, it's like you kind of take the pressure off of it being like your composition and all that shit.
Right, because it's already written. You just have to kind of reimagine it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes it's really exciting because then you
fun,
can it's more just like a fun exercise in using sound and arrangements and what, you know, how interesting can you make something while still maintaining the integrity of the actual song itself.
Right. And with these covers, we're trying to do stuff that people probably wouldn't think we would do. You know, people are like, you know, do a Failure cover, do a Deftones cover, do a Low. It's like, well, we already sound like those bands. We want to do something that doesn't sound like us and make it, you know, something more spotlights.
Yeah.
You know, just kind of reimagine some of your favorite songs you wouldn't even think we would listen to, but
Cannibal Corpse?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, I want to take, maybe some slower songs and make them faster and make them, just making stuff different.
Yeah.
It's fun,
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely. Are you going to be taking maybe any requests? If somebody sends in a request, maybe you could cover it?
I mean, I can't guarantee that we would do it, but we always pay attention to
we read all the comments and see what
if somebody pops up with a good idea that seems to work, we'll definitely explore it. So
yeah, I already have an idea of what you could cover because sounds nothing like Spotlights, but I think your own mix on it would do good.
Okay.
First Noble Truth by Shadows Fall. The guitar melody in there, you put the own Spotlights spin on that, I think it would sound amazing.
I gotta look that up because I don't even know.
We'll check it out. Yeah, I have no idea. I've never heard the song.
Well, that's like the Arcade Fire cover we just put out. I've never listened to that band, and I didn't really know who they were. But Mario had heard that song through a friend of ours a few times and just really liked the riff, and we just kind of worked off of it from that, and we weren't even very familiar with the song. Like, I heard the song for about 20 seconds and then had to, try and, put my vocal twist on it. But that was kind of cool because I didn't have an impression already set in, of the song.
Yep.
Okay.
So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Always great talking to you. Is there just anything else with Spotlights you would like to promote? So far, the Faith No More Corn Tour, it hasn't been postponed yet, but is there just anything else with Spotlights? Is there any way that fans could support you during this uncertain time?
I think just, continuing to support us through our Bandcamp. People have been really awesome buying these covers. We put them up for free just because we know that a lot of people are keeping their money tight right now because because it's it's an uncertain time, but a lot of the fans have been super awesome and have been helping us out through that. I think that's the most important now is just support the music and maybe the venues that are in your town. Anybody local as possible and as small as possible, I think is what's important.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, everybody's been really helping out all the great local venues in the city now, from Vitus to Lucky 13 and everybody like that. Any venues in Pittsburgh you want to shout out that could use a hand as well?
Yeah, I work at a killer place called Cativo. It's one of the best sounding rooms, I think, in Pittsburgh, and the owners, they've had the place for 27 years. It's all self-owned. The owner himself cooks all the food in the kitchen still, and it's just a very grassroots kind of business, and I know they're having a rough time.
Awesome. Is there a GoFundMe set up for them that I could put in the description below?
I don't think so. I think they're kind of almost too stubborn to do stuff like that, but you can always support them somehow if you just maybe go to their Facebook and ask them. Reach out to them.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. Everybody, we are here with Mario and Sarah of Spotlights. Be sure to check out some of the great music that they have coming out, and we'll see you next time on Heavy New York.